Hi, welcome back. This is Dr. Burton. And in my last video, we started to go over this American Worldview Inventory of 2021 that's done by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. We talked about the introduction of this research that has been found that postmodernism and secular humanism increasingly influence American adults. So in my last video, we talked a little bit about postmodernism and what it is that people are embracing when they commit to this worldview, view of life. Today, I want to talk about the other worldview that is discussed in this research, and that's secular humanism in America. Now, I've read some of these secular humanist manifestos over the years. There were 3 manifestos, but today I want to show you a website, the secularhumanism.org website, free inquiry. And what's discussed here is, what is secular humanism? So let's read through some of this to see, what are we talking about? What are people embracing? Who are the secular humanists? So I'm going to click on Secular Humanism Defined. This is a rather long essay, but it's helpful for us to see that secular humanism is a worldview for sure, and there is philosophy that undergirds this worldview. So let's read through a little bit of this. Coined 4 decades ago by advertising executive Rosser Reeves, unique selling position means a distinctive and meaningful characteristic that only one among a cluster of competitors exhibits. It is the thing that makes your message or product different from any other. If secular humanism exhibits such a characteristic, then that would almost certainly justify its existence as an independent life stance and demonstrate the need for a dedicated organization to be its advocate. To me, secular humanism's unique selling proposition is rooted in the balance it strikes between cognitive and emotional/affective commitments. Paul Kurtz captures this when he identifies knowledge, cognitive, and courage and caring, affective, as key humanist virtues. Okay, so did you catch that? Knowledge, courage, and caring are the key humanist virtues. Christopher Hitchens makes the same point more obliquely when he contrasts those who believe that God favors thuggish, tribal human designs and those who don't believe in God and who oppose thuggery and tribalism on principle. Secular humanism's cognitive thrust lies in its naturalistic worldview. Its emotional or affective thrust lies in its positive, ethical outlook. Each element is equally essential to secular humanism. Neither stands alone. I submit this meaningfully differentiates secular humanism from religious humanism and from simple atheism as well. Continuing with Hitchens' language, secular humanists necessarily disbelieve in God, naturalism, and just as necessarily oppose thuggery and tribalism on principle, an outgrowth of ethics. Of course, many atheists, agnostics, and religious humanists do the same, but when atheists and agnostics adopt positive ethics, they do so for reasons independent of their atheism or agnosticism. When religious humanists defend naturalism, they do so for reasons outside the boundaries of their religious humanism. Only for the secular humanist do both commitments arise organically within his or her life stance. Okay, so we just read several paragraphs. Let's talk about what's going on here, particularly in the 3rd paragraph with, the naturalistic worldview. What is that? So remember, we talked about a worldview as encompassing a philosophy of life. There's an epistemology on the ground. The most basic is the epistemology. How do we know? Then there's the metaphysics, which is the foundation. And then there's the house. And the house is the ethics. And out of this house comes our values, our attitudes, all of our choices, our views of politics, our views of the institutions of culture. So a world and life view. Now, this is saying secular humanism has a naturalistic worldview. What is a naturalistic worldview? It's a view that is philosophically materialist, that all that exists is nature, and nature is material, and humans are a part of this natural world, the material world. So if a secular humanist is being consistent with their philosophy, they will say that all that exists is matter, and since something must be eternal, matter is eternal. Now, some secular humanists may not have thought it through all the way, but that's what a naturalistic worldview is. All that exists is matter, and matter is forever, and it's all that exists ultimately. Now, there's also an emotional or affective thrust, and that's the positive ethical outlook. Let's pause and ask this. Why is ethics emotional or affective, the affections? Well, I think the positive part, there's a positive outlook rather than a negative nihilistic outlook, which we saw coming out of the postmodern worldview. There's a nihilism that comes with postmodernism. So here there's a positive outlook. It's not nihilistic, but it's also, I wonder if the emotional part is the ethical grounding. Are there rational justifications for an ethical outlook that the secular humanist has? That's a question I would have. Is it just an emotional thing to be ethical, or is there rational grounding for ethics? So it says each element, both the naturalistic worldview and the affective thrust, is equally essential to secular humanism. Neither stands alone. So this is opposed to religious humanism. There's a Christian humanism which tries to elevate the virtues of humanity, developing all that is good in humans. So secular humanism wants that, but it doesn't want to be connected to God. Like, humans should be virtuous. Why? Because God created them to be excellent, and we should develop our talents for the goal of, bringing glory to God or something like that. That's maybe a humanist, Christian humanist perspective. A secular humanist is going to say, no, humans are on our own. We do need to be excellent, but it's not because God created us with the capacity to be excellent. All right, so there's a distinction between religious humanism and atheism. Now, if you read further on in this essay, which I would encourage you to do, I'll leave the link below, there's a distinction between secular humanism and just atheism, which is a rejection of God. Secular humanism says, yes, we do disbelieve in God, but there's a need for the development of an entire world and life view, which atheism alone doesn't seem to do. All right, so we have a sense of secular humanism. We haven't seen the epistemology come out, but I think when we go back to the Barna research, we'll see some of the epistemology. So we have a metaphysics, material monism, nature is all that exists. Humans are a part of that nature. We're evolved animals. And ethics is going to be virtue-based maybe, and we'll see that may be a weak spot in secular humanism. So I'm going to go back to the Barna research and perhaps, okay, hang on, I might have to come back for this. Okay, I guess I'm on the Barna research. I'm looking for it, but it's right here. Okay, so secular humanism in America. Let's read through this and discuss and see the philosophy coming out, what Americans are embracing more and more. Over the years, secular humanists, who sometimes prefer to be called simply humanists, although when we looked at the definition on the secular humanist website, they don't, because they don't want to be just humanists, because there are religious humanists. So secular humanists have composed numerous declarations to define their philosophy. I think this is good that they're trying to tell us what they believe, what they're for, not just what they're against, which is something that atheism tends to do. Typically, secular humanism includes elements such as the centrality of human reason, red flags go up for me, and scientific inquiry to point the way forward, a desire to develop a more humane and moral society through human effort and capabilities, disbelief in a supernatural deity, an afterlife, absolute moral truth, and religious belief, and a pursuit of fairness, justice, and tolerance. All right, so here's a little more detail on the worldview of secular humanism. I do have some questions, and I said red flag when I read human reason, because I study reason. I'm a student of reason. I want to know exactly what does that mean, exactly what is human reason as opposed to what non-human reason. I want to know what do they mean by human reason, and from my studies, I would probably venture a guess that human reason is something like logic, like practical rationality. It's probably not the laws of thought that are ontological. If you're interested in what I think about reason, I have that very detailed 15-part series on my YouTube channel, Retrieving Reason. It's not the same as what the secular humanists think reason is. But okay, so they have an epistemology, the centrality of human reason, whatever that might mean, and scientific inquiry. Now, I think scientific inquiry is probably easier to know. That's probably the scientific method, the means by which we advance scientifically. And if you don't know what the scientific method is, you should Google it, because all of you should know the scientific method. So this is how we point the way forward. So notice also, if there is a way forward, there's probably an assumption about progress here. Humans are progressing in an upward direction. And we should probably do that. That's a value. We want to go forward. We don't want to go backwards into tribalism and brutality or whatever the website was talking about. Okay, so here's the ethics now. A desire to develop a more humane and moral society. And I would want to know what humane means. What do we mean by that? And what is a moral society? And we develop that through human effort and capabilities. All right, so humans have to work to make the world a better place. That's not hard to understand. Disbelief in a supernatural deity, so no God, no spirits, no soul for humans probably, no afterlife, and this is hard for me. No absolute moral truth. But we've already mentioned progress going forward, more humane, more moral society. So how do we get those things without an absolute moral truth? Because those things seem like standards that we're measuring backwardness against, inhumanity, inhumane treatment against, a non-moral. So we seem to say there's no absolute moral truth, but then again, we need absolute moral truth to have those elements be a standard. No religious belief, and yet, secular humanism had to create an organization with a website to talk about what we believe. It's almost like a creed. So secular humanism functions as a religion, and religion is a belief or set of beliefs we use to give meaning to our experience. Secular humanism is functioning in that way to give meaning to experience to those who adhere to secular humanism. So I think what they mean by religious belief here is organized religions, things that are, supernaturally oriented, things that are not naturalistic. Okay, so secular humanism as a worldview does function as a religion. And we're pursuing fairness, justice, and tolerance. Also sounds like moral categories, moral absolutes. So I don't know. I have an issue with the denial of absolute moral truth, but also wanting fairness, justice, and tolerance. What are those things? And why are those valuable? Can a secular humanist give rational justification for why those values are important, why I should care about them? I think that there's a problem there. And it may be going back to the emotional and affective elements. Maybe we just like those things. Some people like fairness. Some people like justice and tolerance. But we have no rational justification. And when I say rational justification, I'm talking about why. Give me the why I should care about these things. Why should I care about justice? Give me the why. Okay. Those kinds of ideals are found in the thinking of millions of Americans. Yes, who doesn't want justice and fairness and tolerance? Some of the more common expressions of secular humanism include the following beliefs held by millions of people. All right, so let's look at these statistics and think about it. 54% believe the universe had a scientifically explainable beginning. It was not created through any type of supernatural intervention. All right, so this is kind of a loaded statement. Scientifically explainable beginning. I would like to know what exactly that means. Does that mean the physics shows that the universe began from what? How did it begin? So you can believe that there's a scientifically explainable beginning, but can you show it? Show me the science, okay? Show me the physics about how the universe originates. I know you're going to say, oh, the Big Bang. Yeah. Okay. Is that 100%? Is that a fact or is it a theory? Anyway, I don't doubt science and I don't doubt that the universe is scientifically explainable, but I do doubt that these 54% of people who believe it have actually studied the science. It was not created through any type of supernatural intervention. Okay, so it came from nature, or nature has always been there? Anyway, I would say that 54% of people that believe this may be believing it on the basis of lack of proof, blindly. Let's call it secular humanist fideism, where fideism is belief without proof or understanding. I'm just venturing a guess because I have studied this and I'm not sure the science proves anything about how the universe began. Just saying. 48% contend that human beings are the result of an explicable evolutionary process. The worldview rejects the idea that humans were created by God or are made in his likeness. 48%. Okay, so here again, does the science show us that humans are evolved? Or is it a theory? And it's a theory that has a lot of working out of details to do still. And there are a lot of philosophical assumptions that undergird this theory. So the 48% that contend that we're a result of the evolutionary process, do they have proof? Or is it, again, a kind of faith? Secular humanist fideism, faith. I'm just going to put that out there. Give you something to talk to your friends about. 36% identify success in life as the various human accomplishments that produce happiness or a sense of fulfillment. So this gives us the view of the good life, or the goal, or the good. So what is the good for secular humanists? Success. And that's just happiness or a sense of fulfillment, pleasure. Why should that be the good? Do we have rational justification for saying a sense of fulfillment is the goal of life or a successful life? 33% say that their primary guide to morality is human reason. Again, 33% who say this, what do you mean by human reason? And why put the word human before reason? I guess because humans are the highest on the food chain and we're the reasoners. We evolved to a place where we reason. And what is reason? And is there a secular humanist explanation for the existence of reason? The laws of thought. Why are there laws of thought? Are these laws of thought the laws of being? Are these laws of thought applying to eternal being? So if matter exists and matter is all there is, can we explain the laws of thought? Human reason. 24% believe that truth can only be determined through scientific inquiry and proof. I'm not even sure scientists would say that. And this contradicts what we were saying earlier about, let's see, where was it? Absolute. Okay, there's no moral truth, so there's other kinds of truths. Truth can be determined through scientific inquiry or proof. First of all, science doesn't ever give us proof. Reason does. Science gives us theories, and it gives us laws and a method for trying to understand what the world is. But I don't think truth is that. And maybe we want to back up and say, what do we mean by truth? What I mean by truth is what ultimate reality is like. Truth is what is real. And it is something that can be demonstrated to others, and that's beyond doubt. Science always has doubt. Science, the scientific method, gets us to a high probability of truth at best. So the 24% who believe that truth can only be determined through scientific inquiry and proof, you might want to think about what you mean by proof and truth and how you get that. Again, you can look at my Retrieving Reason series where I talk about reason and how we get to knowledge. Other secular humanist beliefs are less widely accepted by Americans. Those include notions such as atheism. 6% believe there is no such thing as God, a supreme being, or a supernatural being. Okay, so the secular humanist website that we looked at said that secular humanism includes atheism, but atheism may not include secular humanism. So it does seem like if we were being a consistent secular humanist, we would say, yeah, atheism, or no, God does not exist. Okay, so that's secular humanism. Again, let's think about the worldview. The epistemology, the claimed epistemology is human reason and scientific inquiry get us to truth. Okay, then the metaphysics is naturalism, which is really material monism, and human nature is evolved because humans are a part of nature. And then the world and life view, we value things like tolerance and fairness and justice and progress and moving forward. So if you find yourself identifying with those values, you might just be a secular humanist. And I would say that's fine. Bring your secular humanism to the table. Let's have a conversation about it. That's what public philosophy is about. Can we critically analyze secular humanism and test it for meaning? Is it true that matter is all that exists and is eternal? What do you mean by human reason? And why should I value tolerance and justice and fairness above all other things? Why? So that's what public philosophy is about, discussing those questions, those kinds of questions together. All right, so let's look at this comparison of the beliefs of people who possess competing worldviews. Now, this is in America, and it's comparing a biblical worldview with secular humanism and postmodernism. So there are other worldviews. This study was just looking at these two in contrast to the biblical worldview. And let's just look at some of these areas that they're contrasting. And the numbers, look at the numbers. Our understanding of reality is based on cultural interpretation. Now remember, postmodernism was looking at the social influences. So that's, again, cultural interpretation. So we have the beliefs that we do because of the way we're socialized. Now, all adults in the U.S., 22%, the biblical worldview, maybe they weren't asked or they just don't think that's true. But secular humanism says 33% and postmodernism 65%. So you can see that cultural interpretation is a heavy factor in postmodernism. Human beings are just biological machines corrupted by society. Now, why are they corrupted by society? This is a view of Rousseau, that humans are most free and most human before they are introduced to civilization. So I don't know. Let's look at it. So I guess in America, 23% of adults hold this, but the humanists, there's 69% of them hold to this view, and 62 postmodernism. That's interesting. I would have thought postmodernists would have embraced more of a Rousseau position. Do you want to be free of civilization and its trappings? All right. Success is best described as consistent obedience to God. 21% of Americans think that. 98% with the biblical worldview think that. Humanists, 1%. What happened there? Why is there 1 if they don't believe in God? I don't know. Maybe they're confused. Remember, nobody's fully conscious or consistent in their world and life view. The basis of truth is scientific proof. 24% of adults think that. Nothing with the biblical worldview. 75% of the secular humanists think that, and 44% of postmodernists think that. So the postmodernists are doubting scientific proof heavily. That's interesting. Why? Because I think postmodernism, one of the strengths of postmodernism is to recognize the interpretive factor, that what we call facts really are interpretations. We need to do more work to get to truth. So it is a little troubling to see that kind of doubt, though, in the scientific method, or scientific proof, so-called. The basis of truth is God, as revealed in the Bible. So 41% of adults in America think that. 99% with the biblical worldview think that. Okay, so what happened to the other 1% of the biblical worldview people? 4% of secular humanists think that, and no postmodernist thinks that. Why? Because postmodernism doubts truth and doubts God and the Bible. So no. Perhaps the Bible would get us a narrative, a competing narrative, but sometimes stories are needed and are good and can tell us something about ourselves. Okay, let's look at the next one. Human beings developed over a long period of time from less advanced forms of life without supernatural intervention. So humans are evolved. 48% of Americans think that. 2% of the biblical worldview think that. 87% of the secular humanists believe that, and 78% of postmodernists believe that. So this gives you a clue. The evolutionary narrative, the narrative of evolution is widely accepted by people that don't embrace a biblical worldview. Okay. Don't know, believe, or care if God exists. 34% of Americans. 0 with the biblical worldview. 85% of secular humanists, and 87% of postmodernists. What this tells me is that this 85% and this 87% have given up on metaphysics and addressing the question. They don't know, don't believe, or don't care, which means they're not seeking. They're not seeking to know. They think they already know. They have the answer. Now, I want to know, do you have the answer with rational justification, or are you fideistically, blindly believing in your secular humanist values or your postmodern values? Because if you are blindly believing, you have no room in blaming the religious folks for just believing, because you're doing the same thing. I'm not letting the religious folks off the hook either, don't worry. There is no life after death on earth. 16% of Americans believe that. That's sad. What's your hope, people? Nobody with a biblical worldview would believe that. 69% of secular humanists believe that. 53% of Postmodernists believe that. Now, it seems like these numbers should be higher. There is no life after death on Earth. Wow. So what happened to those other percentages that say there's no supernatural intervention, there's no God, but some of them are still believing in an afterlife? How does that work? I don't know. Maybe they're bringing in some of those Eastern views. Maybe we reincarnate or something. Okay, so that's the end of the research on how postmodernism and secular humanism are faring in American culture right now. So now we're going to look at the biblical worldview distinctives. I think I'm going to pause here and make another video so that we have more time. I don't want to go long, and I do want to be fair to my listeners. So let's pause and recap. So today we talked about the secular humanist worldview and how people are embracing that worldview more and more in America. We talked about the philosophy of secular humanism, and we are pointing out the importance of doing public philosophy, discussing these beliefs together. And I hope that you will remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. That's how you can help me out and help me to grow my YouTube channel and get the word out so that we have more people doing public philosophy together. Again, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video.